Assemblyman B.Yisrael, you may now join the debates.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. It is difficult for me, Madam Presiding Officer, to sit here and to listen to the member on the other side do something that I thought coming out of the campaign season that they would have stopped doing. And that, Madam Presiding Officer, is to continue using misinformation, disinformation, and blatant untruths to try to hoodwink the people of Tobago. I recognize, though, that within a little over a year, those of us in the executive have actually done quite a decent job of developing the island. And as a result, those on the minority are willing to use every trick in their book to try to cheat Tobagonians out of the kind of development that would take us to this island really being the greatest little island on the planet. And I am asking Tobagonians to pay very close attention to what is being said, and to pay very close attention to the fact that what they are in fact trying to do is to take away the collective, holistic development of this island and place the resources of this island right back into the hands of those who held close over the last 20-something years when they were in power. If you recognize the companies that they are talking about, the companies that they are standing firm with, are the companies that have been there and are the companies that have been ripping off Tobago. And they have been a 1%, if you want to call it that, of Tobago. And what those on the other side is trying to do is to hoodwink the other 99% of us into thinking that we need to stand with them to get all of the resources back into the hands of that 1%. That is not going to happen, Madam Presiding Officer, because I firmly believe, like what happened during January and December of 2021, Tobagonians have sense, and Tobagonians can pick sense from nonsense. Madam Presiding Officer, I would like to take a little bit of time to highlight to us some of the things that the minority leader and the minority council has been trying to say to Tobagonians is not legal, and we're using all of these processes that are not part of what is written on the books, and claiming things like bid rigging and corruption. So let us start, Madam Presiding Officer, with that concept known as bid rigging. Could you please put up? Thank you. I am going to quote directly from the law, and I am actually going to put up highlights of the law so that this is not Dr. Faith B.Yisrael speaking. This is what the law actually says. Now, what is on the screen there is a portion of the Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Property Amendment Act. Now, it states that bid rigging is collusive price fixing and anti-competitive behavior that is designed to unfairly influence the outcome of a competitive tender process in favor of one or more bidders. Now, I listened to the minority leader on television a little earlier this week, and I heard the minority leader indicate that he had all of this evidence that bid rigging had happened and evidence that corruption had happened. So I was really sitting here waiting to see the evidence that all of this was happening. I am yet to see the evidence that this is happening. But I will go a step further, Madam Presiding Officer, and indicate that if, in fact, what he is claiming is actually happening, that he should not use the cover of this House to speak about it, but he should definitely take all of the evidence that he has, not even outside, Madam Presiding Officer. I am suggesting that we actually hold this sitting right now and allow the minority leader to go over to the police station to provide his evidence of bid rigging. Now, it's important to note, Madam Presiding Officer, that the amended act that I was just talking about, that I just referenced, is actually one of many amendments that have happened to that procurement act. You know what is funny, Madam Presiding Officer? That his colleagues in the government in Trinidad are the ones that actually have this procurement legislature at standstill. Refusing to say to the president, please proclaim this legislature to make it law. Yes. And as a matter of fact, in July 2021, the Minister for Finance stated that he had actually placed the 10 individual regulations that were required to make this law a law since July 2021. We are now in February 2023, and all his colleagues in Trinidad need to do is to state to the president, we have done our part. We have gone through the entire process. You simply need to put your signature on this piece of legislation and say it is now law. Why have your colleagues not done that, Mr. Minority Leader? That question needs to be answered. Because if we really are part of this entity that wants to follow all of the rules and so forth since 2021, that could have been a law in Trinidad and Tobago. But no, your colleagues are the ones holding it up. Madam Presiding Officer, I have sat in this House at this very spot over the last couple months, and I have heard the minority leader and his colleagues, Minority Leader 1 and 2, Minority Councillor, claim things that are simply not true. And they are trying to use fancy words that are, the aim is to confuse the average member of the public, because the average member of the public does not understand all of this procurement story. As a matter of fact, I did not understand this procurement story up until very recently, because honestly, it is not my field. It is not my expertise. And within my division, the procurement unit does what they have to do, and then the report comes to me to sign off to say, okay, this person is the one who won the process. So, I am going to take a little bit of time, Madam Presiding Officer, to explain to the people of Tobago why you should never, ever believe anything that comes out of the mouth of any of those members on the minority side, because they are trying to hoodwink. Picture 2, please. I am going to use this document. It is the general guidelines that is developed, created by the Office of the Procurement Regulations. These are the people who should be managing the process once his colleagues on the other side make this the law. So we are going to be pulling from this document. I know that when we bring documents, they ask, by the way, where is it coming from? By the way, it may be worth, Mr. Minority Leader, to let us know exactly who is the QS you are talking about and the qualifications of the QS you are talking about, so that we are sure that you are actually talking about a qualified person who knows what they're doing and can provide the information you are claiming they are providing. Picture 3, please. Madam Presiding Officer, I want to start at the introduction of this document. And the introduction of this document includes a paragraph that says these guidelines provide details on a number of procurement methods and techniques. And I specifically put it there because I want you to see the long list of procurement methods and techniques that are considered lawful and legal in Trinidad and Tobago. And the reason I'm putting it there is because when you listen to the minority, they give the impression that what is happening within the procurement units are actually illegal, when in fact, these are the options. We have open bidding, limited bidding, request for quotations, request for proposals without negotiation, two-stage bidding, request for proposals with dialogue, request for proposals with consecutive negotiations. You keep talking about a letter that have a certain date. Requests for proposals with negotiations, and others will speak about that as we get to it. Competitive negotiations, single source procurement, and sole source procurement. And I put it up there because I want you to see that this is not from me. I don't really know nothing about procurement. This is from the regulators. And when we follow these guidelines, it means that we are actually even following the rules that his colleagues have not even made the law yet, because heaven knows what they're waiting for in Trinidad. Madam Presiding Officer, let's start with open bidding. Picture 4, please. Open bidding is what I thought of when I thought of procurement. And it actually took a while for me to recognize that this is not the only method of procurement out there, but it is what the minority seems to think is the only method of procurement. And what is that? It is, as it says, procurement that is based on an invitation that is advertised publicly, either nationally or even further, where any appropriate company has the opportunity to submit their proposals, submit that, and have that be weighed. So that means we want to do a road. We say, yes, we want to do a road, and everybody can bid to do the road. It means, though, Madam Presiding Officer, that the procurement unit would then have to sit down and review all of the bids. So if 100 bids come in, they have to sit down and review the 100 bids that come in. That is one method, Madam Presiding Officer. Allow me, though, to talk about some of the other methods that are legal and lawful. That other one is known as limited bidding, and that is picture 5. Limited bidding. And I underlined some things in limited bidding because I thought it important for us to review exactly what it says. And again, this is not from me. This is from the regulators. A procuring entity engages in limited bidding when it does not publicly advertise the procurement opportunity, as in the case of open bidding. So it does not publicly put it out for everybody to see. In this regard, invitations to bid are issued directly to a selected number of bidders, either through market research, so the procurement people or whoever look around and say, okay, we want to do this particular thing, let me look to see who are the companies who are doing that particular thing, and let us send the request directly to them. Again, it's not Dr. Faith said that. The regulators. When can something like this be used? One, if the goods, works, or services, by reason of their high complex or specialized nature, are available only by a limited number. So it's only a certain set of people doing it. There is no point in going out to everybody. You send it to those certain set of people who you know are doing it. And B, the time and cost required to examine and evaluate a large number of bids would be disproportionate to the value of the goods, works, or service to be procured. So we go in and do something that costs a little bit of money. It make no sense to send it out to all and sundry and then have to spend a month going through 100 proposals because the thing is only, what, a 50,000 or 100,000 or whatever it is. Whatever it is. And that is a normal, legal method of doing procurement. Or it can be on the other end of the spectrum, and this is one that we talk about all the time. I am so sick and tired of talking about these contracts for these roads, where we did, what is it? Design, build, finance. Design, build, finance. What does that mean? The contractor had to do the design. The contractor had to bill, but most importantly, the contractor had to put out their own money, and we got paid them back after, long after, because the colleagues of the minority in Trinidad and don't want to give you the money that we're asking for. So we don't have the money. And because of that, and the Secretary with responsibility for infrastructure has said it so many times. When you look at the number of contractors in Tobago who have the capacity to put out 19 or how much ever $1 million without getting a cent from us, and wait 18 months before they get a cent from us, we have already limited the pool down to practically nothing. And if we are honest, because I hear others keep talking about this thing about south of Trinidad contractors. If we are honest with ourselves in the Tobago space, I mean, apart from all your good friends and families, the average contractor in Tobago, I know, the ones who are now coming up, because this is the only time they've actually had an opportunity to come up. None of them None of them don't have that kind of money to put out. Because all of them, when they come in and telling you that they want a contract and they want the opportunity to do this, the first thing they're asking you is, how much is the mobilization fee? Because they don't even have the $1,000, the $10,000, the $100,000 to buy the material to start the work. And that is because for the last 20-something years, only a select few had the opportunity to develop. So yes, we have situations in Tobago where we have to go out beyond who is here in Tobago, and as the Secretary for Education just whispered, 66. All of the school repair, or that everybody buff up their face about last year. Of the 67 contractors that were employed, 66 were from right here. And I know, yeah. Now, I want to talk about the one. Don't worry, I got to talk about the one. What is important to note, though, is that again, before in 20, whenever that was, with the whole Calcutta ship, now it just seems like, I mean, you all just have enough sense to not use that word. And 2017, 2020, 2021, when you're making the connection to PDP and UNC, and it's the downright racist nature of your organization, you know what? I would actually have a little bit more respect for them, Madam Presiding Officer, if they said it with a chest. Yes, we're talking race, and we're big and we're bold to say it's race we're talking. Don't try to couch it about south of the Caroni and penal and environs. If you're racist, just be man about it. Be racist. It's okay. Be racist. Be man about it. Don't try to couch it like that. But hey, Madam Presiding Officer, allow me to go on. Picture 6, and I actually would not be very, very long. Picture 6 deals with single source procurement. And there are two types. It is a non-competitive, meaning we ain't going out and asking people for no bid. So it is non-competitive way of getting goods and services. We have two kinds, single and sole. And by the way, having spoken to the Secretary, I've asked the Secretary, what kinds of procurement are used in the division with responsibility for agriculture, infrastructure? I said, wait, will they ever do any sole or single? And the response was, no. So what they were doing was open or select. Open or select, so not even this. But if you listen to those on the other side, and that is why I'm telling Tobagonians, you have to pay very close attention. Do not allow them to hoodwink you. You would assume that what the Secretary is doing is only sole. And he has stood here multiple times and said to the minority leader, you're using the wrong term. You don't know what you're talking about. You keep using, and we are now at the point where we are now convinced that it is not because he does not know, but he's being willful. He's being deliberate, and he's trying to hoodwink Tobagonians. But let's go here. Single source refers to engaging one selected supplier or contractor, even though there may be other suppliers or contractors. Sole source means that that company is the only company that is doing whatever the thing is. So don't even waste your time to say you're going out and ask for other people, because it is the only company, Madam Presiding Officer, that is doing what you are doing. And this takes me, Mr. Minority Leader, to the question that is asked to the Secretary of Education probably 10 times by now. Probably 10 times by now. Today again, we talk about the same story. Today again, hoping that it would stick. But no, we are talking about, remember we said that of the contracts for the school repair, you may have left, Mr. Minority Leader, through you, Madam Presiding Officer, when we indicated that during the school repair program, there were 67 contractors that were part of that process. And 66 of those were from Tobago. 99.98. Good. And the single contractor that is the Trinidad contractor, and I do not know if it is south of the Caroni or not, but is the single non-Tobago contractor that the Minority Leader keeps asking about every opportunity he gets, is one that fits into that one, which is the sole select method, sole source. And why is that the case? Because it seems like this is the only company in all of Trinidad and Tobago that is doing that kind of work. The only company, AFFIRM, that is what I'm talking about, that is doing that kind of work. And by the way, it's important to know, Madam Presiding Officer, that even though those in the minority are trying to give the impression that this is the first time that company has been used, it is not true. That company has been used again because it's the only company that is doing that kind of roofing or whatever it is. The sealant. And they have been working in all of these schools in Tobago for years. 4 years. And yes, it is important to state that fact. Because even though this company, Madam Presiding Officer, has been doing that work for years, I have information about 2020 and 2021 and all of that. 2018 and all of those years. Remember, we were not there during that period. We were not there during that period, Madam Presiding Officer. Even though they were doing that work, Madam Presiding Officer, what we recognize is that because the Secretary with responsibility for education, her administrator, the procurement team, and so forth at that time.
I would like to hear the member's response, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Even though that company had actually been doing that work for the PNM-led Tobago House of Assembly for all of those years, they were actually not registered with the procurement unit in Tobago. The same unit that the Minority Leader is saying, Madam Presiding Officer, that was placed there to put a buffer between the politician and the procurement unit and all of that. This company that was used all of those years was not registered, and they were in fact only registered when? 2022? Last year? When we came into office, Madam Presiding Officer. And we realized that if the law says to work with the THA, you have to be registered with the PCO, that because this is the only company in Trinidad and Tobago, and heaven knows probably in the Caribbean that is doing it, that they must be registered with the PCO before we use them, Madam Presiding Officer. And when I say to the Tobago people, that you all have to be so careful. Because if you only listened to the Minority Leader for the last how much months they've been talking about this very company, you would believe that the Secretary with responsibility for education had done something wrong.
Nobody disturbed.
Members, minority, this is your motion. And this is a response to your motion.
5.1 relevance.
The relevance, she's detailing the modes of procurement. She's still on that. It's pertaining, it's aligned to the question. Assemblyman B.Yisrael, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Presiding Officer. You know, it's important for Tobagonians to also recognize that at this very juncture, where we are trying to explain a critical point that is again highlighting the fact that you should never believe another word that comes out of the minority leader's mouth, is the exact point that he tries to stand or tries to disturb so that the average Tobagonian does not hear what is being said. Madam Presiding Officer, it's important to note that what was outlined in this motion, we are yet to see the evidence of the bid rigging. We are yet to see the evidence of the corruption that they are talking about, Madam Presiding Officer. We are yet to see the facts that are supposed to be in the public domain. But I will end where I started and indicate to those of you in the minority that if you do in fact have the evidence that you are speaking about, please, let us not waste the state's time by sitting here and debating about it. Please let us wrap up the debate now to allow those of you in the minority to walk over to the police station to hand that evidence over to those who can do something even more. Because, you know, if you're talking about public servants, for example, I don't know that we can just decide that we are going to fire a public servant, but can do even more than just that. So, Madam Presiding Officer, I will wrap up by indicating to the people of Tobago that what has been happening within the divisions that we lead is us actually trying to follow the law, and trying to follow even a law that the members on the other side, their colleagues, refuse to make the actual law of Trinidad and Tobago. And because of that, Madam Presiding Officer, we are not going to support this motion at all. Not at all. Because it does not make sense, and we will not be a part. We will not actively participate in the minority council trying to hoodwink Tobagonians and take the resources of Tobago and place it back into the hands of those who are your friends and family. Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer.